Bismillah Rahman Rahim. Our subject is professional development. It is lecture number 23, and the topic of this lecture is T group training. The outlines of the lectures are introduction about the T group training. What is T group? What is meant by T group training and its explanation. First of all, what is T groups? A T group meetings does not have an explicit agenda, structure, or express goals. A T group or training group, sometimes also referred to as sensitivity training group, human relations training group, or encounter group. This is a form of group training where participants, typically between 8 and 15 people, learn about themselves and about small group processes in general through their interaction with each other. They use feedbacks, problem solving, and role play to gain insights into themselves, others, and groups. Under the guidance of a facilitator, the participants are encouraged to share emotional reactions such as, for example, anger, fear, warmth, or envy that arise in response to their fellow participants' actions and statements. Experimental studies have been undertaken with the aim of determining what effects, if any, participating in a T group has on the participants. For example, a research done by Nancy E. Adler and Daniel Goleman, they concluded that students who had participated in a T group showed significantly more change toward their selected goal than those who had not. So Carl Rogers described sensitivity groups as the most significant social invention of the century. So if we talk about more the T groups, then a T group is a form of group training where participants themselves, typically between 8 and 15 people, learn about themselves and about small group processes in general through their interactions with each other. The main concept of this T group is that this is type of a meeting of two, eye to eye, face to face, and this has been articulated by J.L. Moreno in Vienna in 1914-15. In his Inladung zu einer Begegnung, we can say that invitation to an encounter, maturing into his psychodrama therapy. It was pioneered in the mid-1940s by Moreno's protege Kurt Lewin and his colleagues as a method of learning about human behavior in what became the initial training laboratories, also known as the NTL Institute, that was created by the Office of Naval Research and the National Educational Associations in Bethel, Maine in 1947. So it is it has been first conceived as a research technique with the goal to change the standards, attitudes, and behavior of individuals. And the T group evolved into educational and treatment schemes for non psychotic patient people. They use feedback, problem solving, and role play to gain insight into themselves, others, and groups. A T group meeting does not have an explicit agenda, structure, or expressed goals. Under the guidance of a facilitator, the participants are encouraged to share emotional reactions. And what are those reactions? For example, anger, fear, warmth, or envy. So that arise in response to their fellow participants' actions and statements. The emphasis is on sharing emotional as opposed to judgments or conclusions. So, in this way, T group participants can learn how their words and actions trigger emotional responses in the people they communicate with. Moreover, the T groups, the emphasis is on sharing the emotion and opposed to judgment or conclusions. Learning in T group is likely to be frustrating, at least initially, because learning how to learn in a T group environment is unlike any other learning we have ever done. To return to our skiing analogy, when we learn to ski, we fall down often in the beginning, and it takes a while before we feel the exhilaration of remaining upright long enough to feel the wind in our face as we glide effortlessly down a hill. A lot of learning occurs by trial and error and in fits and starts. So the T groups are different than any other groups in that they create an intentional organizational vacuum for the explicit purpose of drawing out central interpersonal issues. In this way, T group participants can learn how their words and actions trigger emotional responses in a people they communicate with. A T group, by design, initially lacks three characteristics that are necessary in order for a group to function. The first one is there is no formal leader, means the faculty, when in the role of facilitators or trainers, will not play that role. And the second one is that there is no set task, means other than the amorphous assignment of building a learning group. And the third one is that there are no established rules or procedures. Now, many varieties of T groups have existed from the initial T groups that focused on small group dynamics and to those that aim more explicitly to develop self-understanding and interpersonal communications. History also widely used T groups. There are different types of group like task groups, evaluative groups, topical discussion groups, and developmental groups, self-help groups, sport groups, advocacy groups, and psychotherapy groups. Now, if we say that what is task group? Task group focus on the here and now, involving learning through doing, activity and processing, and involves daily living skills and work skills. And what are evaluative groups? Those groups focus on evaluating the skills, behaviors, needs, and functions of the group, and is the first step in the group process. Then there is a topical discussion group, means focus on a common topic that can be shared by all the members to encourage involvement. And developmental groups encourage the members to develop sequentially organized social interaction skills with the other members. And the self-help groups are sportive and educational and focus on personal growth around a single major life disrupting problems. Then sport groups are there, means they focus on helping others in a crisis and continue to do so until the crisis is gone, and usually before the self-help groups. Advocacy groups focus on changing others or changing the system rather than changing oneself, getting one from point A to point B. Then psychotherapy groups, those groups focus on helping individuals in the present that have past conflicts which affect their behavior. Moreover, the T groups, that a more recent version of T groups is the Appreciative Inquiry Human Interactions Laboratory, which focuses on strength-based learning process. So there are some assumptions like about the nature of process, which distinguish T groups from other more traditional models of learning. Means learning responsibility. It means that each participant is responsible for their own learning. What a person learns depends upon their own style, readiness, and the relationship they develop with other members of the group. Staff role is there. The staff person's role is to facilitate the examination and understanding of the experience in the group. So they help participants to focus on the way the group is working, the style of an individual's participations, or the issues that are facing the groups. And if we talk about the experience and concept utilizations, then most learning is a combination of experience and conceptualization. A major T group aim is to provide a setting in which individuals are encouraged to examine their experiences together in enough detail that valid generalization can be drawn. It's a variation of NTL T group since it shares the values and experiential learning model with the class T groups. Authentic relationships and learning means a person is most free to learn when they establish authentic relationships with other people and thereby increases their sense of self-esteem and declares their defensiveness. In authentic relationships, people can be open, honest, and direct with one another so that they are communicating what they are actually feeling rather than masking their feelings. Now, before ending this lecture, we define some goals and outcomes of T group. Like goals and outcomes of T group can be classified in terms of potential learning concerning individuals, groups and organizations. Like the individual point of view means most T group participants gain a picture of the impact that they make on other groups member. Our participants can assess the degree to which that impact corresponds with the or deviates from their conscious intentions. So they can also get a picture of the range of perceptions of any given act. So it is important to understand that different people may see the same piece of behavior differently. For example, as sportive or antagonistic, relevant or irrelevant, clear or ambiguous, as it is to understand the impact on any given individual or a specific events. So many people report that they try out behavior in a T group that they have never tried before. So this experimentation can enlarge their view of their own potentials and competence and provide the basis for continued experimentations. Then the group point of views may be there, like T groups often focus on forces which affect the group, such as the level of commitment and follows through resulting from different methods of making decisions, the norms controlling the amount of conflict and disagreement that is permitted, and the kinds of data that are generated. Concepts such as cohesion, power, group, maturity, climate, and structure can be examined using the experiences in the group to better understand how much these same forces operate in back home situations. Then organization point of view is there, like status, influence, division of labor, and styles of managing conflict or among organizational concepts that may be highlighted by analyzing the events in the T group. Subgroups that form can be viewed and analogous to units within an organization. So it is then possible to look at the relationships between groups, examining such factors as competitiveness, communications, stereotyping, and understanding. Again, we explain a little bit about how learning occurs. Remember that no group can be successful without some type of initiative or leadership, purpose, or norms regarding how people are expected to behave. In filling the vacuum that has been deliberately created in a T group, group members feel internal pressure to reduce ambiguity and work out a myriad of issues such as how can we get to know each other in meaningful ways, and how can we connect across our differences. What are the topics that are most likely to provide learning, and how do we change topics when one isn't especially interesting? So can we share our feeling means of being bored, dissatisfied, or bothered? So how can we learn to communicate more effectively and authentically? How much of themselves should we allow others to see? How do we make decisions? What does it take to be accepted as a valued group members? How is influence shown? And how can each of us be influential? How do we reconcile member responsibility to the group and freedom of the individuals? What is legitimate pressure versus courageous? How can we challenge be challenged without this becoming an unsafe place? How can we give and receive feedback that is helpful and not destructive? So, this was all about this lecture. Thank you very much. Take care. Allah Hafiz.